Okay, well, I think we will begin. I know people are going to be trickling in. We want to welcome you to our Waimanalo Town Hall meeting on cesspool conversions. And tonight we like to start with this slide, which was taken at Waimanalo Beach, add a little humor to a serious topic. Because cesspools near the shore, we like to remind people, are like toilets on the beach. And so tonight we've got a great crew of people who are gathered, experts in the field of wastewater, our legislators, and special guests. And so we're very excited to welcome all of you, and we appreciate you taking the time to learn about this very important topic. And before we begin and do introductions of our panel and speakers, we wanted to begin with an Oli, and our good friend Mahina Paishan Duarte is going to do that for us. She's on our board, and so we really appreciate you taking the time, Mahina, to be with us tonight and start off the meeting for us.
Sure, aloha mai kako. I had the great pleasure of helping to restore He'eia Fish Pond, which is my virtual background, and co-founded Pai Pai o He'eia. I have deep love and affection for Ko'olau, certainly the Manalo waters of Waimanalo. So I want to aloha all of you, those who are water keepers that are helping to care for our water sources. I'd like to offer this mele, which allows us to remember the sacred nature of water and its role in the water cycle. E ui he nina e ui akwa na ia o e ai he akau e a kane. Ai ai kahiki nā kala puka i hae ai ai laila kaua i a kane. E ui akwa na ia o e ai he akau i a kane. Ai kaulana kala I ka pai o pua I ke kai a mai ana mani hua makamule mai ole hua ai laila kaua ia kane e ui akua nau ia oe ai he a kaua ia kane ai ke kua hiwi ke kua lono ke awawa ke kahawai ai laila kaua ia kane E ui akua nau ia oe ai he a kaua ia kane. Ai kai ka moana I ke kualau I ke anuenue ka pūnohu I ka ua koko I ka a lewa. Ai laila kaua ia kane. E ui akua nau ia oe ai he a kaua ia kane. Ai luna kaua ia kane I ke au uli, ke au ele, ke au pano I ke au popolo hua mea kanela e. Ai laila kaua ia kane. E ui akua nau ia oe. Ai he a kaua ia kane. Ai lalo I ka honua, I ka waihu, I ka wai kaua kane me kanaloa. He wai mapuna, he wai e unu, he wai e mana, he wai e ola. E ola no ea. Ola. Ola no kako. Aloha.
Aloha, mahalo, Mahina. That was beautiful and the perfect way to start this meeting. We appreciate that. Welcome to all of you who have are still trickling in. Want to introduce ourselves. We are a new nonprofit at WAI, and WAI stands for Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations, and of course is the Hawaiian word for water, which is the source of our mission. And so we want to welcome you. My name is Stuart Coleman. I'm the executive director and co-founder, and I will kick it to Christina.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight for this conversation. My name is Christina Comfort. I'm the program manager at WAI, and I'm a coastal oceanographer, and my research interests are in water quality and land-based sources of pollution. I'll pass it to Yoko.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Yoko. I am the project coordinator for WAI, and I work for WAI as part of my fellowship with UH Sea Grant College. and my background is in wastewater engineering. Just wanted to give a quick heads up before I pass it to Raquel that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed, so nobody will see your face or hear your voice if you decide to stay on mute. Turn your camera off, that's totally fine. Just wanted to give a quick heads up. Thank you all very much, and I'll kick it over to Raquel.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Raquel. I'm the operations coordinator here at WAI, and I will be taking notes on all the questions this evening. So if you guys have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat and I will get to them at the end and talk to our great panel. And if you're calling in on the phone, then we will also catch your questions at the end. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Stuart.
Thank you, Raquel. And John Anner is also the co-founder and managing director, but he had to move to New York to be with his parents, aging parents during COVID, but sends his best. So mahalo. So Christina, I'll kick it back to you for a little bit of information about WAI before we introduce our guests.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. So I'm just going to introduce a little bit more about our nonprofit and what we do. So WAI's mission is to reduce sewage pollution and restore healthy watersheds by providing innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions to waste and wastewater management. And our vision is essentially to help homeowners and people who have on-site disposal systems and cesspools on their property manage the process of upgrading these systems all across the state to new systems that are affordable and better for the environment. So I'll pass it to Yoko to talk a little bit about our programs.
Thank you. You can see on the bottom of the screen right now the 5 pillars of WAI that we have defined to not only guide our mission, but also to help homeowners understand what we want to do. So the one I like to start with is policy and advocacy, which is the reason that we're here right now, because the bills that were passed mandating the conversion of cesspools, we'll get more about that later. And we're continuing to advocate for legislation to be passed to make it easier for homeowners to convert. A question that a homeowner might have is, what are the hazards posed by cesspools? And so the pillar of outreach and education is pivotal, and these town halls are part of that. Another question might be, so what should I upgrade my cesspool to? That's where the pillar of innovative technology comes in. And we are working hard to bring in technology that is not only more affordable, but also more effective in treating wastewater on site. Pilot projects are the pillar that describes that we want to put systems, what I just described from the innovative technology, in the ground in accessible areas in Hawaii so that people can look at them before deciding to put them in their own backyards. And last but not least, financial resources. WAI is aware that the conversion of cesspools can be costly, and so we want to do everything we can to make this easier on the homeowners. And I'll pass it back to Stuart.
Thank you. We are really pleased and thankful to have Representative Lisa Martin and Senator Chris Lee on our panel tonight to help introduce this. And then later on, we'll have for our Q&A, we'll have Dr. Roger Babcock, who's the new Director of Facilities and Maintenance for the City and County of Honolulu, and Michael Mezzacapo, who's an outreach specialist with UHC grant. And then we'll hear a little bit about our co-sponsor from Oahu Resource Conservation and Development Council, Hannah Eubanks. But first, we'd like to turn it over to Representative Lisa Martin, say a few words, and then followed by Chris Lee. You might be on mute, Representative Martin.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much for, the resources that you are pouring into this to help our environment and help our community. As you mentioned, it's a daunting, expensive task to convert. I think everybody is committed to doing the right thing to keep the ocean clean, but the process will be hard, and I really appreciate your folks' efforts to hold our hands as we go through that process.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the same. For a long time, we've had reports from the community over issues with our our freshwater streams, as well as our beaches and everything else in between that are directly affected by a lot of this. And this isn't obviously just a Waimanalo problem, it's a problem that we experience around the state. But Waimanalo in particular is one of those communities in our own backyard where there is a lot of cesspools and a lot of potential to try and fix that. And so we really want to try and partner with folks who know what they're doing. And it's so great to have you guys all here to help the community digest what it is that actually can be done, so we can take tangible and meaningful steps to actually get people help that they need to convert, because eventually it's going to have to happen, not only because the government basically said we got to do this, but because ultimately we have a responsibility to our kids, and we don't want people swimming in the ocean when it's polluted with all kinds of sewage and bacteria and all kinds of stuff. So it's up to us to make sure it happens, and that's what this conversation is really all about. How do we start to put people on a good path and give them the financial means and ability to do something better for our next generation? So thanks for being here, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Chris. That was the first time I think I've ever heard you not do a poop pun when we were talking about this topic. Chris is famous for them. So I'm sure there'll be some.
That's a lot of crap, Stuart. I want to put that out there.
There it is. Thank you to you both, and we appreciate you being here tonight. And now I'm going to turn it over to our co-sponsor tonight. Hannah Eubanks works for the Oahu Resource Conservation and Development Council and was kind enough to help support this evening. So Hannah, I'll
introduction, Stuart. Yeah, and big thanks to you guys at the WAI team for organizing this group of presenters tonight. So as Stuart said, my name is Hannah Eubanks and I work for Oahu Resource Conservation and Development Council. We go by ORCD, kind of the acronym alphabet soup. And our organization's main focus is mostly to encourage natural resource conservation, and we also do a lot of support of sustainable agriculture. So we've partnered with WAI on the cesspool issue in Waimanalo as part of our watershed restoration project in the area to improve water quality. So currently we're wrapping up a 2-year project where we've offered a cost share program to landowners in the watershed, and that provides conservation plans to them and also funding to implement best management practices on their land to improve the water quality, such as stream restoration projects and various approaches to address soil erosion, which we all know is also a really large contaminant for water quality. So as part of the project, we're working with WAI to improve the outreach to residents in the area that need to do cesspool remediation and provide some of those updated resources that folks are interested in. Our organization also offers conservation planning and grant funded opportunities island-wide. So that's in a variety of areas like natural resource stewardship, agriculture innovation, and also a really great support system for women farmers. So if you're interested and you want to learn more about those, you can check out the website that's on the slide here, or you can contact me via email. So with that, I will pass the torch back to WAI and continue with our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. And before we jump into presenting all our information about cesspools, we're gonna just do a quick survey to get everyone engaged and get some read on how people are feeling about cesspools at the start of this presentation. So there's 2 questions here. So this is anonymous and you just have to answer both questions and then you can submit. So first question is, do you think that cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii? Yes, no, or not sure. And second question, you can pick multiple, second question is a multiple choice, complete the sentence. I've heard that sewer will come to Waimanalo and take care of my cesspool. I do not have to worry about my cesspool until 2050. I need to convert my cesspool to a better system, or none of the above. So I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to input your answers there.
Thank you, Christina. Right now, it looks like about half the people have responded. I'll read out sort of the general consensus once we get a little bit more. Now it looks like 2/3. Y'all are very fast. I appreciate that. 21 of 29, very good. Give it maybe 10 more seconds. Very good. This will not be on the final, don't worry about it. All right. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now. 3, 2, 1. Very good. And then I'll share the results here. So you can see that a whopping 88% think that cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii, while 12% are not sure, and nobody thinks they don't pose a problem. So that's already very good. We're very happy to hear that you're aware of the problem. And then number 2, only 8% have heard that sewer will come to Waimanalo and take care of the cesspool, or that they don't have to worry about it until 2050, while 68% have heard that they need to convert the cesspool to a better system. So that is really making us hopeful. And I want to say thank you all very much for participating in this first of 2 polls. So you can be excited about one more poll coming up later.
Yes, that's very good news indeed. This is a very woke crowd. So now for our next slide, we will kick it to Michael to kind of talk about the basic differences between cesspools and septic systems.
Thanks, Stuart. So you'll see 2 kind of graphics on your screen there. The one on your left is a diagram of a cesspool. The one on the right is a diagram of a typical septic tank. So you can see with the cesspool, really what it comes down to is there's a disposal method. We can get rid of the waste, but there's really limited to no treatment of that waste, right? It can reach the groundwater, it can take potential pathogens and nutrients with it, and eventually it's going to end up in the ocean. With the septic tank, it's a sealed tank, so it allows the effluent and sludge to be held and not leak out, and that sludge can settle in place, and you can couple it with multiple different sort of methods to dispose of that, where microbes will treat it and reduce those pathogens and nutrients over time. And without upgrading your system from one that is just basically an open pipe to the ocean, you're going to run into issues. And so we'll talk about that more in the slides today.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. It's a good overview, and as it says, there's no treatment with a cesspool, and so Hawaii was the last state in the country to still allow for cesspools, and so in 2016, a large group formed a kind of coalition and helped pass Act 120 to ban the construction of new cesspools, and then offer homeowners a $10,000 tax break to upgrade their systems. Unfortunately, that tax break expired last year. And so we hope in the future at some point we're going to be finding other subsidies to help homeowners. Then the next year, we helped pass Act 125, which mandated the upgrade of all cesspools by 2050 and required DOH to complete kind of a priority upgrade areas report, which means where were the cesspools the worst, where was the highest density, where was it affecting water quality and such. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then in 2018, they passed Act 132, which created the cesspool conversion working group for the state. And Michael and I serve on that, and Roger Babcock is an advisor. And we're trying to come up with solutions for the whole state. And currently we're working on a bill that we'd love to get your support on, SB Senate Bill 369. And that is, it would just make sure that we have cesspool inspection and conversions upon sale of a home. So, the real estate market has skyrocketed during the pandemic, and you have a lot of people coming up and buying up homes here. And when there's money on the table and people have money to buy, that's a great time to make sure that the cesspools are converted. So we hope to pass that bill this session, and it just passed out of the Senate and should be moving to the House the next couple of weeks.
So following up on the Act 125, which mandates the cesspools to all be converted by 2050, that act also included these designations of cesspool conversion priority areas. So the Hawaii Department of Health did a study where they looked at different areas all around the Hawaiian Islands and identified certain areas that are highest priority for the cesspools to get converted. So they are ranked And a priority 1 area is a location where there's a significant and known risk to either drinking water, public health, or sensitive streams and coastal waters. These are areas where we have some nice data sets that really correlate strongly between the cesspools and these problems that we're observing in the environment. For priority 2, these are areas that are likely to have some impacts to drinking water. And in priority 3, we're looking at areas that have potential impacts to ecologically sensitive waters, again, including streams, endangered species, coral reefs. There's also priority 4, which is where the impacts are not yet identified. So this is an ongoing process, and we're still looking at cesspools all around the islands. And there are some areas where the impacts might be lower than others. So on Oahu, there are 11,300 cesspools that are known. And these cesspools discharge 7.5 million gallons per day of untreated effluent. So that is a lot of poop going into the water. And obviously that's a pretty urgent problem that we are working to deal with. And there are 5 priority areas on Oahu. We have 1 priority 1 area, which is Kahaluu, and then 4 priority 3 areas where the impacts from the cesspools are likely to be harming ecological resources. So Waimanalo is one of those priority 3 areas, as well as Diamond Head, Ewa, and Wailua. So zooming in on Waimanalo, there are 530 cesspools in the region. The priority area is outlined by this blue shaded area, and each orange dot is an individual cesspool. These 530 cesspools discharge 350,000 gallons per day. And also just on this slide, you can see a list of the representatives for this area. Just so in case you don't know who your representatives are, that's a good resource for folks to talk to and to know who represents you. There's also a large area of Waimanalo that is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. And you can see this area outlined in the purple shading. And there are 81 cesspools in this area. And WAI has been working on a collaboration with Department of Hawaiian Homelands to help with possible solutions to these cesspools as well. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about why Waimanalo is a high priority for cesspool conversion. There's a lot of research that's been done in Waimanalo that highlights various issues regarding the cesspools, some of which is that there's a lot of the streams in Waimanalo are hardened. So instead of having a nice natural stream bed, you have hardened waterways, and that allows pollution to get flushed faster towards the nearshore and ocean ecosystems. And then also, I just wanted to highlight a study. This is by a colleague of ours, Dan Amato, recently published in 2020, showing some environmental impacts, specifically in front of the Waimanalo beach lots. So I'm zooming in on that area in the previous figure. And this is a lot of scientific information, kind of a complex figure. So I'm just gonna walk you through what's the important point here. So these, all these black dots on the map are the individual cesspools in the beach lots. And this star is the wastewater treatment plant that has an injection well. The colors on land show that there's nitrate that is modeled. This is a modeled data set from this wastewater treatment plant. And in the ocean, you have all of these colored data points. And anywhere that there's a red or orange data point, it means that the researchers found evidence of sewage pollution in the environment at that area. So you can see that there's sewage pollution in front of where this wastewater treatment plant is, which is probably, it's most likely just the elevated nitrogen because that is treated effluent. But then there's also evidence of sewage pollution down here on the south end, more towards Makapu'u. And really that's going to be attributed more likely to the high density of cesspools in the area. Surfrider also monitors fecal indicator bacteria, or basically bacteria that is found in poop. And that is, occasionally we do get high readings in Waimanalo for that as well. So as you can imagine, having all of this untreated waste flowing into our streams and oceans is really bad for both human health. First of all, it can pollute drinking water. And obviously nobody wants to be drinking water that's come in contact with your toilet water. Hawaii also has really high rates of staph infections and MRSA infections compared to other places. And we also have the highest per capita rate of cesspools. So that's a pretty easy connection to make. There are also pharmaceuticals and other types of chemicals that are in wastewater that we don't really know what all the effects are on public health and environmental health, but they're called contaminants of emerging concern. These are things that we're learning more about and trying to understand how they impact humans and the environment. On the environmental side, this influx of nutrients from untreated sewage into our coastal waterways can cause all kinds of negative ecological impacts. One important one is that it can cause invasive algae overgrowth. Additionally, sewage pollution can cause coral disease and reduced coral cover in areas where there's reefs. And it's also been shown to cause changes in fish behavior and fish reproduction in areas, even like right in front of Waimanalo, there's not a lot of reef, but there's a lot of fish living there, and it can have impacts on how they behave and interact. So that's a quick overview of the cesspools in Waimanalo and and what type of impacts that the pollution can have on the environment and on humans. I also just want to quickly point out our collaboration with the Department of Aquatic Resources, DAR, and their 30 by 30 initiative. So DAR works mostly with fishermen and working to promote sustainable fishing. But they're also aware that fishing isn't the only pressure on our nearshore ecosystems. And so we've been collaborating with them to help bring in more of a focus on land-based pollution, such as the pollution from cesspools. I just encourage you guys to look into the 30 by 30 initiative. This is a really cool program that encourages place-based marine resource planning, responsible fishing practices, and restoring and protecting our coastal ecosystems.
Thank you. A question that many people have on their minds, not as many as we expected thanks to the opening poll information, but one question that certainly still should be answered is sewer expanding in Waimanalo? As you know, there is a municipal wastewater treatment plant, but we at WAI, even though we've been doing extensive research and have been talking with the local stakeholders and administrators about this, don't have a definitive answer about this right now. Just to give you a little bit of background, cesspools and individual wastewater systems are under the governance of the state of Hawaii, and the municipal sewer is under the county jurisdiction, which means that Honolulu City and County are the people that would be able to know this. And so we're talking to them intensively and trying to figure this out, but as of now, we don't know. Obviously, if we find out, we will let you all know. We have your email addresses thanks to your signing up to this town hall, and we'll reach out to you. But even if sewer did become available, we can tell you that the sewer has many components that have to be checked off. The first one is that the sewer has to have the capacity to take these homes on, because both the treatment plant has to be able to treat the waste, and the collection system, meaning the pipes, have to have the capacity to convey that wastewater. And even if that's the case, sewer is often very expensive because the city has to pay taxpayer money to build the conveyance system, and then the homeowners are forced to pay for the hookup fees, which can be also between $10,000 and $20,000 for the laterals themselves. And as you can see on the photo here as an example, sewer construction can be very disruptive to the communities due to the roads having to be dug up. And as you know, traffic in Waimanalo can sometimes already be kind of crazy. So we wouldn't want to make that even worse. And so we want to give you information in the following about on-site disposal systems or individual wastewater systems, But just keep in mind that if there's new information that becomes available, y'all will be the first to know right after us. So a question that I got into earlier is, what do I convert my cesspool to? What about septic systems? What about composting toilets? And I would like to tell you all a little bit more about those two things. Septic systems, as Michael explained, do provide some treatment. However, the level of treatment, due to the rudimental nature of the septic tanks, it's literally just a box. Water comes in, gravity settles the heavier particles, everything else goes right out the back. It's really not rocket science, and so it doesn't treat the wastewater to a degree that's acceptable if you're in high groundwater, if you're near the coast, if you don't have a lot of space. And so for these beach lots in Waimanalo, for example, it wouldn't be the best option. And then composting toilets are not really encouraged by the Department of Health, because as you can imagine, the maintenance of those forces the owners to handle the raw sewage and scoop it out with a shovel. It's really face to face with your own poop. And having to handle that is not really ideal because it poses health hazards and it's really maintenance intensive. So we want to present you some alternatives to those things. The first one that I want to present to y'all is the Cinderella incineration toilet. This is technology from Norway that WAI has been partnering with for a while now, and we actually have put 2 of these systems, the gas-powered kind, in the ground. One is at Moku'oloi, and one is at Kuilima Farms on the North Shore, and they're both open for visitors if you want to check it out, if you want to maybe even use it yourself. That is an option with those. And the great thing about those as compared to composting toilets is that these here are just producing pathogen-free, odorless ash that can just be put into the waste bin or even put into your garden as a soil amendment. It's totally safe, and you don't produce that raw waste that you have to handle. These are waterless, meaning you don't have to have a water hookup. You don't have to have a sewer hookup because the ash is the only thing that's created. And they come in electric if you want to put it in your existing bathroom with the power hookup with an outlet, or you can put it with a propane tank somewhere totally off the grid. These are perfect for those applications. Then other options that are more dealing with all of the waste streams from a house and are better than septic systems are biofilters, aerobic treatment units, and constructed wetlands. And I'm going to just give you a quick outline of what those are and let you know that WAI is partnering with these companies and trying to get them into the regulation so that these can be put into the ground at a large scale. The first one, the biofilter, essentially is a septic tank combined with a special leach field. And the leach field is special because it has a layer of wood chips beneath the regular layer of soil. And that layer of wood chips is a place where organisms can grow and live that are really good at treating the wastewater. So it's bacteria, nature-based. Aerobic treatment units are the electric version. You have an air pump that creates small air bubbles, which also bacteria can live on, aerobic bacteria that are really good at treating waste, and it goes out the back. So this one is a smaller footprint, but it's electric. And then there's the constructed wetland, which is also nature-based, and it's a little bit like a marsh. You can have it like a garden, as you can see on those photos, and it also treats the wastewater by nature's way. So we're really excited about these methods that all are able to reduce nutrients, so nitrogen, before it enters the ground. And on a larger community scale, we like to call it cluster system. We also want to put our eyes on that because sometimes that's the best way and the cheapest way for a community to upgrade all of their cesspools is the company that we partner with called Cambrian Innovation. And you can see one of their systems on the left, what it looks like. It's a container, shipping container. They call it a modular system. They use state-of-the-art wastewater technology. But the cool thing about them is that they also have state-of-the-art business model because they can produce something called a water energy purchase agreement, which means that they own, operate, maintain, build everything, the plant. The community doesn't have to put any upfront capital expense into it, and you just pay for the gallon of treated wastewater. And they can treat it so well that it can be reused for agricultural purposes, for example. And a little schematic here of what that might look like. You would have a community that produces wastewater and pays Cambrian a monthly fee. And the wastewater is cleaned up to a reuse standard, and that can be sent to an agricultural area that needs the water, and so it doesn't just get wasted somewhere, and the landowner can then host the wastewater treatment plant on their land. This is being used all over the country, and we're trying very hard to bring it to Hawaii. And I'll kick it over to Stuart.
Great, thank you, Yoko. After the pandemic hit last year, right around this time, we quickly realized that, Hawaii went from one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country before to one of the highest unemployment rates after the pandemic. So we assembled a great kind of team here that you can see at the bottom, including the University of Hawaii, the community colleges, the Water Resources Research Center, UHC grant, the Department of Health, and our nonprofit. And we put together Work for Water. And the 4 stands for the 4 counties that we want to do cesspool replacements in. We want to do 400 all total, 100 in each county. And also the 4 main goals that we have to really increase workforce development, to build up on our infrastructure and invest in what is a kind of decaying and outmoded infrastructure, do cesspool replacements all in the name of water protection. And so we've been working on that for the last 9 months or more. And we think this is one of the strongest ways to not only convert all the cesspools, but to create a lot of green jobs. And so, along with reducing the public and environmental health risks that are associated with sewage pollution and cesspools, we think this is a really good way to kind of jumpstart the economy by creating shovel-ready projects to convert these cesspools in the most at-risk areas like Waimanalo, which would be a perfect place to begin. And so this would also kind of create a blueprint for each county and the state to help fulfill the mandate to convert all cesspools by 2050. So we're in the course right now of working with the chancellors of the University of Hawaii community colleges to develop these training courses in the wastewater sector. And like I said, these will create long-term, well-paid jobs that are not dependent on tourism, and you won't have the boom and bust of construction jobs, because these will never really go away. With 90,000 cesspools to convert over the next 30 years, that's 3,000 a year, and we're currently doing about 150 to 200. And once you replace all those 90,000, you're going to have to start all over again, because these cesspools have a lifespan of 30 to 50 years, these septic systems rather, and other alternatives. So they need to be redone, at least every 50 years. So these jobs will not go away, and they will continue to contribute to state revenue through job creation, the multiplier effect, and bring in needed revenue through taxes for the state. I'll kick it to Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So the solution that we're trying to put together is called Work for Water. This is a proposal that we've been trying to get funding for, hopefully federal funding. So it is a concept that it tries to, as Stuart mentioned, develop the workforce and invest in infrastructure, et cetera. And the idea is to begin the process of replacing the 90,000 cesspools that there are in the state, and currently there isn't any sort of momentum to begin to actually do the conversions and learn what works and start to collect data and figure out how you do financing and all that kind of stuff. So Work for Water is designed to replace 100 cesspools but with different kinds of technologies in the 4 different counties. So 100 in each county, 400 total. It includes a big public outreach component. It includes doing the permitting and design and essentially funding that. Then it involves a component of manufacturing and installation. There's training required for that component. So there's jobs needed in manufacturing and installation. Same with permitting and design. Once they're installed, then they've got to be operated, maintained, inspected, and then we've got to sort of evaluate some of these newer technologies and how well they work, and then develop the regulatory framework so that they could be easily approved and for general use. So that's Work for Water system. And should I do this one, Stuart, or?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Sure. So the idea of Work for Water fits in with a larger concept called One Water, where we try to break down the silos of wastewater, stormwater, drinking water, groundwater, all kinds of water. It's all just water, and it can exchange between the different groups, and we need to have sort of a holistic understanding of the whole water cycle and its relationship with climate change and sea level rise and all these things. So Work for Water is part of that. Thank you, Roger.
And so, you know, as we kind of wind down the presentation and open up for question and answers, what part of what we want to do tonight is, you know, we're going to need a minimum of 100 to 200 homeowners that are interested in doing this. So when we get funding from, you know, the government agencies we're working with, and there are some national bills right now that are aimed very directed at this issue, because they know that it's an issue around the country, as well as Hawaii. And so we're looking for homeowners to sign up, kind of send in their information so that when we get the funding, we can move forward. And we're hoping to, you know, get subsidies or rebates up to $20,000 to apply, you know, for those conversions. Nothing is guaranteed, of course, and it depends on funding, but, you know, we want to make sure that there's a certain number of people at the low income level that will cover the whole thing. And for others, the rest, then we'll you know, work on these subsidies. So if you're interested, you can sign up at this tinyurl.com cesspool conversion. And we can also kind of route you to people who are, you know, can help you with that process if you want to move forward earlier than that with engineers and such. And we'll be glad to help you as well.
So there's, while we're waiting for the Work for Water program to get funded, we also can share some information about programs that already are in place to help homeowners finance these kind of home repairs. So USDA has a rural development grant and loan program. These are federal loans or grants for low-income households. So the two types of grants that they have are called 502, which is basically helps homeowners from low-income situations qualify for loans that they might not otherwise be able to get. And 504 is basically for home repairs, and loans can be also for low income. Loans can be up to $40,000 with a low interest rate. And if you're 62 years of age or older, if one of the homeowners is, then you can get up to a $10,000 grant to help with the home repairs and creating sanitary conditions. The eligible area for this program is everywhere on this map that's unshaded. So it's basically the entire Waimanalo community. One thing that's important is that there is an upper limit on how valuable the property is. So I think that's at $576,000 at the moment. But USDA also has experience working with Hawaiian homelands. So if you live in on the Hawaiian homelands area of Waimanalo, this might be a really good program to look into, because they have been helping out some folks out on the west side in Waianae and Nanakuli to access these loans. And again, if this is something that you think would potentially apply to you and you want some help navigating getting the process started, I can help you out with that. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and I've been seeing some really great questions popping into the chat. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But right now we have our second poll. So this is a 5-question poll, and just make sure you scroll down and answer all the questions before you can submit. So our first question: what barriers exist for residents of Waimanalo to convert their cesspools? Is it the cost of converting, the construction impact on your property, people don't know how to start, people don't think it's important, or none of those? Second question: are you concerned about human health and environmental problems posed by cesspools, especially after hearing the presentation? Number 3, what value would be the biggest motivator for Waimanalo residents to convert their cesspool? Clean environment, public health, improvement in your property value, to follow the regulations, or none of those? If $20,000 in financial aid was available, would you be more willing to convert your cesspool in the short term, in the next 1 to 3 years? And lastly, complete the sentence. I'm concerned about water quality as it relates to sewage pollution for swimming, fishing, and traditional practices, the cleanliness of your drinking water, coral reef health, or if you don't have water quality concerns, you can select the last option.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Yeah, it's looking like we have about almost half filling out the survey already. Great job. Give it some more time. Consider these questions. Some of them are multiple choice. All of it is anonymous, like Christina said. And just a quick heads up, I don't know, I haven't looked into the chat because I'm sharing my screen, but if it hasn't been said yet, this slide deck will be shared with all of y'all. So all of the links that we're talking about, Stuart's going to show some more links right after this. These will be sent to you so you can click it from the comfort of your own email inbox, and you don't have to take vigorous notes right now, but we appreciate it anyway if you do. So
Also, just a quick shout out to Michael Mezzacapo for helping us design the survey.
That's right.
And to Yoko for orchestrating it with Christina.
Yeah, so it looks like 22 out of 30 have responded. We'll give it maybe 20 more seconds. 24 out of 30, very good. 80% are in. Give it 10 more. Look at the beautiful background. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to end it here and share the results with you all. So the first question, the number one choice that was made here was that the biggest barrier for residents of Waimanalo to convert would be the cost, at 84% of folks saying that that would be the case. Construction impact ranking number 2 at 56%. 40% would not know how or believe that it's hard to know how to start the process. And 16% might be the barrier that people don't feel that it's important. For question 2, or actually the folks that put none of the above, feel free to put in the chat what you think other barriers could be. We would love to learn about them and help overcome these barriers. Question number 2, are you concerned about human health and environmental problems? 88% said yes. 4%, only 1% said no, and 8% need more info. So please feel free also post in the chat or via email what other info you would like. We'll gladly give that. Question 3, the biggest value for cesspools to be upgraded, people see in the clean environment. 60% of folks said that answer. Public health comes in at number 2 at 48%, and improved property value and abiding by the law come in tied at 32%. Nobody said none of the above, so we're happy to hear that. Question 4, if the work for water proposal is granted and you were chosen as one of the recipients, meaning up to $20,000 in financial aid was available, 56% of people said they would be more willing to convert their cesspools in the next 1 to 3 years. Nobody said no. 16% said maybe, and 28% said they do not own a home with a cesspool at the moment. And question 5, the last one, people are concerned about water quality as it relates to sewage pollution in terms of swimming. 76% of folks said so. Fishing, traditional practices, 64%, same with drinking water, and 60% are concerned about coral reef health. And nobody does not have any concerns about cesspools and sewage pollution. While we obviously are not happy that people are having concerns, we're happy to see that people are facing the reality of the situation and are working with us to make this better. So thank you all very much. And I'll move it over to the next slide. Back to Stuart.
Thank you, Yoko. That's helpful information for us in focusing on priority areas and people's the values about what's most important to them. So we appreciate you being part of that. And we have a number of references that we put in the chat, and we'll be sending these to you, but just the first one is the one we mentioned. If you want to be eligible for the up to 20,000 in rebates and subsidies. Fill out that teeny URL. We have our WAI website up there, which has a lot of great resources. We have the USDA Rural Development Office link up there to look into their loans, and we can help with that as well. And then the Department of Health and the EPA have links that we've posted here that you can learn more from their perspective as well. Then finally, our co-host at ORCD has some information that we put in earlier, and we can put in the chat. And then the Water Resources Research Center and Hawaii Sea Grant also have resources that you can look at. And we look forward to kind of now taking some time to answer your questions, many of which were put in the chat. We'll welcome back our legislators and our panelists, and kind of maybe ask our legislators if you have anything that you want to start off with. Any questions that you saw or any comments before we dive into particular questions.
Sure, this is Chris. In the past, there has been some talk about how people can convert, having this conversation, similar conversation a number of years ago. And what came out of that was this idea that the city and county was going to come in and potentially put in an upgraded sewer connection to the beach lots and all of that. And of course, that didn't come to pass. And the city is, I think as we all saw the other day in the news, scrambling to try and find money just to make ends meet. So if, for example, folks are sort of on the bubble about, do we make this kind of personal investment on our part, or do we wait for the government to step in? Are there cases where other communities have taken it upon themselves to try and solve that problem earlier? And really, how can people here either learn from that or take action themselves and not find themselves later on regretting it because the state or somebody else was able to provide some support? I guess basically, like, what's realistic for people and what should they expect is what I'm getting at.
Question. Anyone in particular like to take a stab at that question?
What name did you say?
I think it's open for anybody. I mean, I'll say that, along with doing the individual conversions, Chris, that people can start with, and, we can try to help find resources with. We also have companies that are willing to donate some equipment and engineers that, are willing to give really reduced services to kind of get some of these new systems in the ground. So we can help with that if people are interested in their lots, fit the kind of equipment that has been offered. But there are also things like, community solutions where they could bring in, company like Cambria, where they can do a whole community and do sanitation as a service. And so instead of each person having to spend, anywhere from 20 to 30 upward to $40,000 to convert, you could pay on a monthly fee with no upfront capital cost. And so you just need a certain portion of that population to agree to do that, and maybe do that through a sewer improvement district.
Exactly. And adding on to that sewer improvement district comment, it's really about public pressure on the city council, for example. If the neighborhood comes together and really everybody bands together and says, we need this, then the elected officials will listen. So it's an amount of pressure that can make the difference. But like I said earlier, we will inform you if other information about sewer comes in. But I can tell you that in the past, to answer your question more, Chris, in the past, communities have used that method to put pressure on their local county council, city council folks, and have made that happen. But it is certainly a large undertaking. And so we can guarantee that if somebody upgrades to an individual wastewater system and pays that money and goes through that process, and sewer does come in, you won't have to connect to the sewer and pay double, essentially, as long as your system is good. So that's an argument for upgrading now.
Thanks. And I asked that because that's usually the very first question we get is basically, can we just wait for somebody else to handle it? And clearly the answer is it's complicated, and you may end up potentially paying twice.
Yeah. And it's not cheap to, even if sewer does come in, sometimes the homeowners have to pay the lateral fees, and that can be very expensive. And, you know, so there are a lot of costs with that. And then they bring in monthly sewer fees. So it's the most expensive form of treatment, doing sewer lines. It's like $1 million per mile in construction costs and everything. But maybe at this point we can, unless Representative Martin has some comments or questions, and I'll put it out there for you. And then Raquel can start kind of putting together some of the questions that she collected in the chat.
I'd be happy to have you take the questions from all the participants. If we get to me, that's fine. If not, I know where to find you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Raquel?
Awesome. So we had some really great reactions and questions. We also had 11 people joining us on Facebook. So hello to you all on Facebook. Thank you for joining us this evening. So first question is actually from Teresa from Facebook, who lives in a priority 1 area and wants to change from septic to wants to change from cesspool to septic in her newly purchased home. But they're running into issues with DOH rules, which are saying it's going to take up to 6 months. So I will actually ask Stuart, Senator Lee, and Representative Martin if you guys want to answer this question.
Yeah. Yoko actually has a much better grasp as a wastewater engineer himself, who has to deal with the state. And to be clear, this is a state issue. So the Department of Health is the one that has jurisdiction over cesspools and septic systems, individual wastewater systems on people's property. And there are certain limitations. If you're too close to groundwater or very near the shore or a water body, you can't just convert to a septic system. You have to do a higher form of treatment, like an ATU, an aerobic treatment unit. Yoko, anything else?
You got it. You hit the nail on the head, Stuart. Great job. And I can just add that the typical process of upgrading a cesspool can be really quick, you know, depending on the engineer and the contractor and the homeowner. If everything works smoothly, it can be done within 2 months. So I'm not sure what the issue is with the 6 months. Please feel free to email us, and we'll help you in the specific case. But yeah, in general, Stuart, I can only echo what you said.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Bernice, and they would like to know if they're routinely putting microorganisms into their toilet that flushes into the septic field, will that help avoid the consequences of a cesspool? And I will direct this question towards Yoko, our resident wastewater engineer, Dr. Babcock, and Michael Mezzacapo.
I can try take a stab at it, and then Dr. Babcock and Michael can add to it if they like. This is actually a very interesting field that we're also learning about at WAI, is the adding of microbes that are sort of a booster to the microbes that are already in your system. So yes, studies have shown that these can work. Obviously, certain products have more and better effects than others, but it's certainly something you can do. It doesn't magically make your septic system or your cesspool a wonder machine that only produces drinking water. It's still wastewater, and so it still has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. But it certainly, if you look into this and you make sure that you buy the right product, it can have some positive impacts.
Great, thank you. Michael or Dr. Babcock, do you have anything to add?
I'll just go ahead, Roger.
Okay, I'll just add that if you're asking whether you could potentially keep a cesspool and add microorganisms to it by flushing them down the toilet or something, and then have it sort of not be a cesspool anymore and provide a level of treatment equivalent to a septic tank plus leach field, that wouldn't work. It gets into the engineering a little bit, but basically a septic tank is a holding tank, as was mentioned, and then the water goes into the absorption field or leach field, and there it encounters aerobic conditions. So it's connected to the air above, and so then there is a way for microorganisms to eat the waste as it percolates into the soil, and it spreads it out to a much larger area. A cesspool is a cylinder, and it's going to be anaerobic, and there isn't going to be a way for those microorganisms to do the treatment within there. I'm not sure if that exactly was your question, but there's an answer to a question.
Thanks, Roger.
Great, thank you.
I'll just add, sorry, I'll add to that. It's important to think about, I think, in general, this question is what you put down your drain ends up in that waste disposal system. So I did put a guide in the chat that was done by the Washington Sea Grant program that really talks about, what you want to avoid putting down your drain, greases, fats, harsh chemicals, things like that, especially if you have a septic system, but also if you have a cesspool, right? We don't want those pollutants ending up, or let's say you have a really heavy rainstorm and your cesspool overflows, that also is going to end up on the surface water, your neighbor's lawn, down the street. So hopefully that helps. And that was just an extra point there.
Great, thank you. We're actually going to continue this talk about environmental effects, and Kamuela mentioned that we've been talking about injection wells, and they wanted to know if and how that's affecting the ocean resources. And again, I will direct this question, because it's on the same subject, to Michael and Dr. Babcock.
Did you want to go first, Roger? Or?
Sorry, go ahead, Mike. You can go first.
Sure. This is sort of it's difficult. Injection wells are a concentrated source of, nutrient pollution. The wastewater itself is treated for pathogens, but we still have to get rid of that water, right? There are a couple different methods. You can spray it out over a surface and have it evaporate, or it can be injected into designated and registered on-site wastewater injection wells. However, it really depends on the geology that surrounds those wells, of how quickly that water laden with nutrients can enter, say, the ocean environment. And we've seen that off the coast of West Maui with the recent lawsuits that had taken place. So it's sort of it's a challenging subject, and we certainly need to investigate other methods besides just wastewater injection wells to dispose of treated wastewater. And so like Roger was saying earlier on about the one water method, is we really have to rethink the use of, flushing, let's say, potable water away, right? So can we reuse gray water for toilet water, or can we treat that water and use it in, say, agricultural systems or landscaping? So not just sort of sending it off to the ocean and saying, well, we're done with that, but figuring out creative solutions and ways to make sure that water is treated as a very precious resource for which it is.
Awesome.
Could I just jump in a little bit on this question as well? Just kind of tying some things together. Thanks, Mike, for that answer. And yeah, there's, with the injection wells and also with a traditional septic system, you do get treatment that removes a lot of the pathogens and bacteria, the things that can make you sick or make corals or fish sick and harm them. But nitrogen and nutrients in general can still percolate into the water from those types of treatment. So when you get a lot of nutrients loading onto reef ecosystems, it can cause things like invasive algae overgrowth. So even though it's not the pathogens and the bacteria, which is like, and also the fecal indicator bacteria, those things that are really showing up from cesspool related pollution, there are potential still negative impacts to the environment. And going back to that previous question about adding microbes into a septic system, this is one of those areas that that kind of microbial treatment could help mitigate and reduce the amount of pollution coming out of, say, a standard septic system. That's something that we're hopeful about and looking into.
Awesome, thank you all. Okay, our next question is from Jonah, and they said that our understanding is that you currently have cesspools and want to do new construction, you must connect to the city sewer. Is it possible to convert to a septic system if we are required to connect to the sewer for new construction? So I will transfer this question over to Stuart and the Representative Martin and Senator Lee.
I can also help if needed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if right now, if you need to pull a permit to do any kind of renovation or additions or construction at your home, you have to upgrade your cesspool, but you do not have to connect to sewer unless you're within a certain distance to an existing sewer line. But generally, you just have to upgrade your individual wastewater system. And so, there are a number of options that you can do to do that. The good thing, some people ask, well, what if I do the upgrade and then the sewer comes to my community? If you're upgraded to an acceptable system by DOH, then you wouldn't necessarily have to connect to the sewer system.
That's right. And the only time where the Department of Health would not allow you to upgrade to an on-site system, but it forced you to connect to sewer, is if the sewer line is along your property line. So if there's a feasible option for you to connect to the sewer, they will not allow an on-site system. That's because on-site systems are temporary in design, even though they can last 50 to 80 years. The municipal sewer is the preferred solution. And so if the Department of Health has already told you that you have to connect to sewer, then unfortunately that is the final word in that case. But it's definitely worth checking in, and it's property by property. It can be different, just like Stuart said.
I was just going to chime in. I know that I Love Nalo, right along the highway there, across from the polo fields, kind of, they are being forced to connect to sewer. They're going to take over a lease for the 2 adjacent properties there. And I think they expect that to run them about $100,000 to do that. So that is a pretty expensive requirement that they have to do in order to develop that property.
Great, thank you all. Our next question is from user N2JA30, asking if Christina said something about the WWTP was not ineffective in treating sewage that's seen by the pollutants such as nitrogen showing up in the ocean. And then they also wanted to know that factored into fecal components. So I'll kick that back to Christina.
I think I'll just go over this quick. I think we mostly answered it in a previous question. But if we're finding fecal indicator bacteria, like from the Department of Health's testing programs, or from Surfrider also has a citizen science-based testing program that measures fecal indicator bacteria. If you're seeing those things come up, that is more likely due to untreated sewage that's getting into the system. So that would be from a cesspool.
Thank you. All right, the next one, we have 2 more questions for the evening from Camuela. Is the goal to bring a community option of delivering these types of services to Waimanalo, giving us another option to another sewer entity? And this can go back to Yoko or Stuart or Senator Lee and Rep. Martin.
Yeah, I'll say a quick word. The we don't have one specific goal here. We just really want to give as many options as possible for each homeowner. And so you have, you're better educated and go in, and we can help and work with you to find the best option. But that is one possible one where you can avoid paying all the upfront capital cost, and by working together with the community, if they can all agree, you can do something that way, and that would be the way to reuse the water, because when they're going to make sure that that's part of the program, and then it's just a fee that the community would have to pay. But I don't know, Roger or anybody else.
Yeah, I'll jump in just a little bit on that. I think in some cases that kind of broader communal system might make sense, in others it wouldn't. For example, you have a lot of folks in the backroads of Waimanalo where there's just a lot of distance between properties where it just wouldn't make sense to have something as large. But in the beach lots or in a tighter area where you have more density, there are potentially more options available. So it just depends on the situation. And I think, to Stuart's point, depends on how many people really want to join together to do something, because it really does take that economy of scale to make larger systems work. And the technology is changing rapidly. I think Stuart and I were at an event where we had a number of different options, from really, really huge that can serve hundreds and hundreds of homes to smaller dozens and even just a few homes down to single individuals. So we know that technology is out there and it's rapidly changing, but it really comes down to that specific application and who wants to partner together to do something to see what might make sense financially.
Great, thank you all for those answers. All right, last or second to last question, we'll see. Kevin wants to know what considerations might be in play for approval of a septic conversion. Are there limits to proximity to surface water or water table that we should know about that may prohibit approval of a septic system? I will transfer this question to Yoko and Dr. Babcock.
Thank you. Yeah, I can take the first stab. So by the law right now, so by the Hawaii Administrative Rules 1162, which is the governing text on wastewater systems on site, the law is if you are in a place where the bottom of your leach field and the top of groundwater is less than 3 feet, you're not allowed to have only a septic tank. Also, if you're closer than 1,000 feet to a potable drinking water well, or closer than 50 feet to a water body, then you would not be allowed to have that. But I will say that even in some places in the beach lots, for example, where that might be the case, it's still not ideal. So we would always encourage the bold move to a little bit more than just quote unquote just septic, even if it's technically legal, but those are the mandatory minimums.
Awesome, thank you. So right now we are at 15 minutes. Just to be respectful of everybody's time, we're going to try and do our best to end at 8 o'clock. We have 1 or 2 more written questions in the chat that we can get to, or we can open up to oral questions. And also just reminding everybody that we will be sending out a Q&A of all of your questions after tonight, and it will be a PDF that everybody can access and get to. So if you have additional questions that we have not answered yet, please.
Someone who influenced me. Is my book on these shelves, or was that?
Kayuka's question was the one about what are the positive and negative impacts?
Positive, negative impacts of what? I'm sorry.
Foreign microorganisms in local wastewater treatment. Okay, yeah, so Kayuka asked, what are the positive and negative impacts of utilizing foreign microorganisms in local wastewater treatment systems in both home and industrial use? And what has been the impact studies of indigenous microorganisms thus far with the injection wells? This is a really good question for Michael, Dr. Babcock, and Christina to answer, our local water quality experts.
Roger answer that. I'm not aware of those
Okay,
studies?
sure. It's a fairly complicated question. The microorganisms can and are used in wastewater treatment plants that are can be purchased in a bucket, freeze-dried microorganisms. There's also grease-eating microorganisms that can be purchased and added to systems that are overloaded or have problems. These are natural microorganisms, and they're approved by the Department of Health. They have to be imported. So any kind of organisms that would be added would be considered safe. It wouldn't be possible to use them otherwise. Indigenous impacts on indigenous organisms. I think that's a fairly complicated science question that is I don't think we're prepared to answer in this forum. It has to do with injection wells too. So injection wells are for wastewater treatment plants, and injection well can either have an impact or not have an impact. It just depends on what quality of water you put in the injection well. You can put highly treated water in there, and then it could have no impact. So it really depends on what level of treatment is happening.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, and thanks for the great question.
For oral questions.
Yeah, thank you, Raquel. Any questions if someone would like to speak up and ask?
I have a question. I spent a lot of time dealing with other shit today. Kailua has had a problem with their wastewater treatment plant and has been not discharging untreated waste, but incompletely treated waste. And there was also some snafus with communicating that hazard to the public. But I noticed on the slide that you folks put out that around the injection well, that's where it was super colorful with the different colors, the warmer colors indicating a higher contamination with some sort of indicator bacteria. So I wonder, if that is, in addition to needing to convert our cesspools to either better cesspools or septic tanks, is there a movement to try to improve our injection well? That seemed like the biggest problem in that slide.
Yeah, that's it's a great question. Michael kind of referred earlier to the Supreme Court case with the Maui injection wells. And that's pretty highly treated effluent that was going into those injection wells, and still it was having an effect on the coral reefs and the water quality in the area. And so injection wells are a problem, throughout the state. Some are not too much of a problem, but others are, especially when you have high concentrations of wastewater that's not treated as well, and with volcanic soil can just go right, to the coastal waters and sensitive waters and groundwater. Roger or Michael, do either of you want to add anything? Or
yeah, I'll just add that the colors representative that you saw are for nitrogen. So they're not for pathogens. That's for nitrogen, and the plant is not, that plant is not designed to fully remove nitrogen. So that's why you would see that plume. And nitrogen is important in groundwater. There is a drinking water regulation standard for nitrogen, and that's related to nitrate. It is the nitrate concentration. But a plant can be designed to fully remove nitrogen. And so the important point is that the same is true of an on-site system. So an on-site system, if it's an aerobic treatment unit or a specialized septic tank plus nitrogen reducing biofilter as a leach field, can achieve the same sort of levels as you could get in a wastewater, a fully mechanized wastewater treatment plant. And so then those colors can be a lot lighter in terms of what comes out. So and so for a septic tank system, what happens in a leach field is nitrogen is converted into nitrate, which is the form that causes that pollution. So unless you take it the next step and do what's called denitrification, then the nitrogen is eliminated. It's converted to nitrogen gas and it goes into the atmosphere, where the atmosphere is already 78% nitrogen and it's innocuous. So kind of a lot of details there, but that's I think what the explanation that's needed for that figure.
All right.
Yeah, I just
I
wanna-
realized that was a bit of
okay.
a detour, but I am that was really great for me to hear. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Question, comment, if I could?
Please.
Yeah. I was kind of excited about some of the alternate approaches, and I believe in Makiki at the Nature Center, there's a eco vault that was put in maybe 15 or 20 years ago, or a system using a container, and it seemed to be effective. I haven't kind of analyzed the waste, but it seemed to be working. And one of the trips I've been wanting to take my wife on is to go on to look at the sewage treatment plant on Lanai. She hasn't been as excited as I am, but I believe they're using wetlands, where they're using aquatic plants in, I guess, various ponds to reduce the, I guess, the concentrations of the effluent before it's released into the ocean or a stream. And so I've been excited about going to see that, but again, my wife is not as motivated as I. When I looked at the Cinderella toilets, I again get excited, but then I thought in terms of, I think it cooks the waste for an hour, and I'm thinking about the energy requirement, either gas or electric, required to toast those little biscuits into to ash. And so I'm not sure if that's actually, I guess wise from a, I guess, energy standpoint, but I haven't done my research. And then, anyway, I'm long-winded. I have a large agricultural lot and in Waimanalo that I'm trying to develop. At the moment, we're paying about $200 for a porta potty, and it seems ridiculous. They were thinking about putting in another porta potty, and in that I specialize in aquatic plants, I'd sure like to work with someone on a wetland system, which I believe is, I think what is being used on Lanai. How would I go about partnering or kind of doing that?
Yeah, this is
a lot of questions. Have fun.
I feel you in terms of, wanting to take romantic trips with my wife. She doesn't get as nearly excited about this stuff as we do, but the system at the Nature Center in Makiki is a living machine that Lauren Roth at Roth Ecological did. And that's more of a constructed wetland system. And so Roth Ecological has designed those across the state, and that's using nature-based system. And it's a really interesting kind of way to treat that using nature. As far as the Cambrian one, that's more of it's an MBR approach, which is kind of what many of the big treatment plants used to treat it, and that's like the highest kind of form of treatment you can get. And so that's what Cambrian uses. And then there are other kind of processes to polish that water to make it available for reuse. And then finally, just with the Cinderella, that's something that, specifically what you're saying is kind of where we're getting a lot of interest for farms where they need to provide it, where they have, porta potties that are at least $200 a month, and all the costs that are associated with that, with pumping them. Then the Cinderella toilet really makes a good comparison, because you could argue that it uses less energy and that it could pay for itself, within 1 to 2 years, and yet you don't have all that pumping and you don't have the kind of the smelly waste that you have to deal with. It's a much more safe and healthier kind of perspective. But we'll be glad to work with you and everyone. If you want to find out more about these options, feel free to contact us. The simplest email is info@ycleanwater.org, and you can reach out to us. I want to take, the last couple of minutes to thank everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And any final comments from our panel or our legislators before we thank everyone?
Sure. I think the big takeaway, two big takeaways. The first one is this is the first time I'd ever been prompted to consider a sewage treatment plant as the location for a date. I'm not sure I'm going to test that anytime soon. But secondly, this is fantastic because I've been watching how many people have been following along with this conversation online, which is really important because obviously hundreds of cesspools and hundreds of properties and homes out there. So it's really encouraging to see that level of engagement. A couple of years ago, it was that kind of engagement from our community that led us to pass the $10,000 per home tax credit, which we passed out of the environmental committee that I chaired at the time. And that's the kind of thing that eventually we'd like to return to. COVID's a bit of a downer on the budget right now, but we hope that we can provide the kind of incentive and assistance to folks. And the way that we're going to get there is if people really demonstrate that they want to make a commitment to making this kind of change, so that we know that if we put money aside, it'll be used not only by the organizations like those that are here tonight to be able to distribute appropriately, but also just by homeowners, because it's going to take a commitment on the part of the state to make that. So if folks want to follow along that conversation, and sign up for these kinds of conversations and these kinds of commitments going forward, it would be a great help, I think, for us at the legislature to be able to take the next steps and follow through with additional support that can help make some of this stuff reality for local folks who need the help.
Thank you, Chris. You've been
I agree. I just wanted to follow up and say that one of our jobs is to help individuals navigate state services. And, there with the potential grants, should this group get their grant, their federal grant they're hoping to, they are geared towards lower income people. And I don't know what the application process is like, but my office would be happy to help people navigate that application process and fill out the forms, overcome any online, computer issues people may have, especially if they are older. And so if you know somebody that needs help applying for these kinds of benefits, that is something that, we would like to do for sure.
That's great. Thank you, Representative Martin. We appreciate you taking a leadership role on that because it is a difficult process, and we're here to work with you and help you. Roger and Michael, any final words?
No, just thank you, Representative Martin and Senator Lee, for joining us, for VI, for hosting this, and all the community members that showed up.
And you for staying up to 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. You're the hero of the day here. We appreciate that. Roger?
No, just thank you, everyone. Happy to try and help. If there are questions that you send to VI, we'll help answer those. Yeah, and Roger's on our board as well, and we're eternally grateful for his help and glad that he's working at Honolulu City and County with these issues. And Hannah, anything that you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think you guys did a great job, and thanks for being great hosts tonight and sharing some really valuable information. And thanks to all of our special presenters as well. Really appreciate your time. Likewise, thank you for your help and support with this process. And to all of you that stayed here, we really, as was said earlier, by Chris, the level of engagement is impressive, and so we appreciate it. And if you did want to find some community solutions or just individual solutions, we really do want to work with you on that. We're here to help, and we appreciate everyone taking the time to be here tonight. I want to thank my team at VI, who has been working really hard on this presentation to pull it all together, and to Mahina for the beautiful melee that she opened up with. So hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And thanks again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Stuart. You killed it too. Great job as always.
Mahalo. Okay, and we'll be in touch soon over email. Thanks again. Aloha.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.